Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are live for the second hour of the Marblemount Bigfoot Conference. So here is Tom Control, and he is going to be introducing our next speaker.
All right. Once in a while in your life, in this realm, this Sasquatch realm, you come on people that mean more to you than the average person. I've had several in my life, 63 years now, I've reached that time. Fortunately, I have a couple of them here today, if you can believe that or not. But this particular one did something different. When she asked the question, what do I do? How do I go about this? She listened. And not only that, she did it. Okay? And you get to find out what she did. Ladies and gentlemen, one of my bestest friends in the whole world is Judy Carroll. That's right. Just go get your feet tangled up.
Tom makes me cry. Good looking crowd here, you guys. Thanks for coming. Will you let me know if you can't hear me at any time? Louder? Okay. Testing. Is that better? Is it up all the way? Yeah. You know what? The fans are on and it makes it hard to hear. That's what I noticed when I was back there. Anyways. Oh, well, hey, you know, there's a lot of chairs up front here. Would you guys like to squeeze in? Because a lot of this is audio and visual. It'd be really bad. Because of COVID, we don't want you to squeeze in, right? But I really want you to hear and see what I'm going to present, because what I'm going to be showing today is something that's quite different, probably, than what you're used to hearing and seeing, and I really want you to get the most out of it. Okay, so we're going to be talking about, by the way, thank you, Sabella, thank you, Tom, and thank you to our tech people over here for helping me get these speakers hooked up properly. I'm not used to using a microphone and holding it, so just bear with me if I stray away and come back. I promise. Okay. I come to this kind of as a reluctant, kind of kicking and screaming experiencer, not wanting to share a lot of the time. And Tom has been my mentor for the past over 5 years now, and he has kind of been tugging at me to share what's going on with me. But just know that it becomes very difficult for me to talk about this for many reasons. Can you hear me okay over here? I'm not used to being on our live radio either. An 8-foot Sasquatch named Combe walked up into my life 5 years ago. It was actually July 31st, 2016, about 5:30 in the evening on a Sunday. And he stayed, which is unlike every other man in my life that usually leaves. He has been my teacher, ever-present teacher since that time, and before that time as well. I just didn't know his name. I didn't really know what was going on. So what I want to do today is share with you how this occurred and take you to a place where you can, if you want to, get yourself a teacher. I really appreciated Tom's presentation this morning. You know, he really pointed out some important stuff. There's a lot of it I don't agree with, so some of this might be refreshing to you to hear. Anyway, by the way, this is just artwork. Combe, this is the best artwork I could find that closely resembles him. However, he does not have as much of this long hair, and he has a Roman nose. That's how I describe his nose. Very, very noble looking. Kind of reminds me of an eagle's gaze. You ever look at an eagle, the way they have their eyes real close set and they've got this big beak? He kind of reminds me of that. Also, he's gray. He's not this color here, although it's hard to tell what color that is. 8 feet tall, beautiful, beautiful being. They are very similar to people. This is Tom's teacher over here. They don't really look a whole lot alike, not like they would be brothers, but, I imagine they all have their own unique facial features. All right, let's get into this. The first thing I want to teach you that Kombe taught me is that they do want to connect with us. They do want to teach you. So when Tom was talking earlier about how they want nothing to do with us, I completely disagree. Because over the last 5 years, I have taught and hooked up people with teachers. So, and my batting average is pretty good. I would say I'm getting about, more than 60% of the people I teach end up getting a teacher. And it really depends on the student and how bad they want it, And that's really the crux of this is, do you want to actually have a relationship with these beings and have them teach you? So it's completely up to you. It's a choice. Part of the reason why this is hard for me to talk about is I treat patients from all over the world. I pioneered this treatment in periodontal medicine, and my name is already out there. Amongst my colleagues, and I already get stabbed in the back enough for what I do, which is over the last 20 years trying to bring humanity back into dentistry, basically. So I pioneered this treatment in periodontal medicine to treat people with really severe stage gum disease that are losing all their teeth. And they travel from all over the world to come see me for this procedure, and I didn't want them to get on the internet and go, hook me up with this topic or connect me with this topic because I thought I might lose business as a result. So I want to let you know that I'm actually on sabbatical now, and I have decided that this is more important. And it's not about me. So like Kombe tells me, he's telling me right now, it's not about me, this is about you. And Tom mentioned that this morning, and so I've got to remember that there's a lot going on in the world, right? This is a crazy place. We need teachers. We need Sasquatch elder teachers in our life right now as humans. We need this. So I think that's part of the reason why a lot of them have come forward. He got his teacher before I did. He was able to mentor me through getting mine. And now I'm mentoring others. And maybe some of you will do the same thing if you get a Sasquatch teacher. You'll be able to mentor your friend or your relative or something. There's a lot of parallels in my professional life to what goes on in the Sasquatch world that I've noticed, and I might kind of bring some of that stuff out later, but not right now. Just know that I have a strong science background. That's the other point I want to make. I think a lot of people feel that there's too much woo, and if you hear some kind of word that makes you uncomfortable, you might go walking out the door. I just want you to all know that I'm a scientist through and through. I publish research, I publish papers, I read science. I read science books. I rarely read fiction books. I read a lot of science. So this is kind of my thing, is I hope to bridge the gap, if you will, between the woo crowd and the science crowd. Because these beings are both. But I don't like the term woo at all. All right. Tom would agree with me on that. So, remember this slide. Just try to stay open-minded, humble, and teachable. And this is how I was actually able to come up with my periodontal protocol, by the way. I just stayed open. I read a lot of research, but I also just stayed open to what was coming, and I didn't dismiss things that would otherwise be dismissed. Sometimes this can make someone feel very uncomfortable when you're out of your comfort zone. And I might share something with you today that may make you feel uncomfortable. But just, if it's not for you to hear right now, that's okay. You can come back to it at another time. But hope you get some nuggets out of this anyway. Where is Mike? Where's your husband? I don't see him. Terry?
He's not here.
Oh, he's not here.
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, so and I find that this slide is very humbling because this is the stuff you don't even know that you don't know, right? And this is the realm that is really fun to explore and be open to and allow it to come. And that's really, it's fun. It's a lot of fun being explored. Okay, so here's the objectives for today. By the way, I do a lot of lecturing in dentistry. So it's a little bit weird to be lecturing for me about Sasquatch. And like I said, I'm not as comfortable with it because I don't do it all the time. I think this is only maybe my fourth or fifth time that I've actually presented this material. Learning objectives, we talk a lot about in dentistry, what we're planning to teach. And I really want, if you want to, I want to help you learn to develop a meaningful connection with these beings. And I also want to demonstrate a possible new direction in the research. Because I feel like the research is very stagnant. It's very stagnant. And again, going back to the parallels with dentistry, the research in dentistry and periodontal medicine is very stagnant. We've been doing the same thing for 70 years. So I think it's time that we actually become more holistic in our approach, and not just our research, but also collectively getting together and talking about it respectfully, instead of two different people making, two different groups making fun of each other. More inclusive is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so here's an analogy for you that I came up with and I shared with Tom, and he kind of liked it. It's like there's a 3-story house, and there's a basement, a carport basement at the bottom. I did traditional periodontal research for 10 years, and it was like I was down in the basement garage here doing Sasquatch research. All the things that I was taught, which was, collecting data, and I'm going to show you what I was taught. No, it's about doing castings and measuring strides and DNA and hair samples and all that sort of stuff. And after doing that for 10 years, I wasn't getting anywhere. Of course, I gathered a lot of information. I had a lot of really cool experiences, but it wasn't fulfilling. So what I tell people is we're down here, or I was down here in the garage basement looking for Sasquatch, and they were on a whole nother level. They're on a whole nother level, and they can't really hear you. They can't really hear you or see you if you're on another level. So I love analogies. I'm kind of an analogy person. This slide is so funny because there was someone selling a house. I just got this off the internet. And they were using Sasquatch pictures to sell their home. So they had a Sasquatch in every room. They had a Sasquatch baking cookies. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
It's pretty clever. Have you noticed that Sasquatch has become so, cultural, pop culture? You see all these businesses popping up, Sasquatch this, Bigfoot that, all these businesses, Bigfoot coffee, all that stuff. It's kind of funny when you go to do a search for Sasquatch, like Sasquatch painting. I was looking for a particular painting, and it came up with a business called Sasquatch Painting. It's like you can't get away from this term anymore, right? So also, in addition to those 2 first levels, meeting them here and then having them take you to a higher level. So it's something I kind of want to refer back to from time to time. So remember that slide. I spent 15 years up here on the Cascade River. I was a complete and total fishing addict. I would do what's called extreme fishing. I would do ultralight gear. If I hooked into a big fish, I'd go downriver with it just to land it. I was mostly catch and release at that time. A lot of my background is crawling around in the forest. It's what I love to do. I don't want to do anything else. If I'm not at work or with you all, I want to be out in the forest. I want to be crawling around where there's no trails. I like to go off trail. So just to know that, lifelong experience. This particular place, the Cascade River, was where I got married. It's also a place where I had numerous experiences I couldn't explain. But Sasquatch was not on my radar at that time, because this was in the 90s and early 2000s. My son was conceived up here. I wanted to share this next slide with your husband. That's why I put it in the presentation. You know, as a fisher person, the Cascade River way up high, and I'm talking way up high, and this is a place where no humans go. There's this canyon, and it became a very special place for me and my husband to go up there, and we would wait for the water to drop just right, and then we'd hook fish after fish after fish, you know, kind of a fish bowl, so not very challenging, right? Because the fish can't get past that canyon. But it was a lot of fun. So I moved away from the area. However, I still love coming back here. This is like my home away from home. But I now live over on the Olympic Peninsula, where I do pretty much the majority of my research in the Hoh Rainforest. Also in Port Angeles, Dungeness River, various places. There's so many beautiful places over there. Lake Crescent, climbing Mount Storm King, doing things like that. I have experiences in all of these places. And he was talking about the little people, which really blew my mind because I had an experience just last year with those little people. I'm not here to talk about that, but I was really shocked that he talked about something I knew nothing about. This is the main classroom for me, is the Hoh Rainforest. Has anybody been to the Hoh Rainforest? Very otherworldly. Would you say it's really kind of an otherworldly place? There's something incredibly special. No words can really describe this place. But this is where most of the teaching would occur with my teacher. And we're going to talk about what he's been teaching me so that you can understand that. The thing about it is, over the last 5 years, they teach me in baby steps. They've taught me in baby steps. And I can only teach you the same way that they teach me. So I'm going to teach you what was going on 5 years ago and show you, bring you forward so that you can start practicing these things right away. But trust me, it's going to morph into more. It's just that I can't give you all the information all at once, or you might go running out the door just because you don't understand it, you know, quite frankly. I never thought in a million years I would be talking, you know, even standing up here talking in front of y'all. So, by the way, it's really what they teach, and a lot of people don't like to hear this, is they teach you who you are. It's not about who they are, it's about who you are. As Tom was talking about earlier, you know, our planet is in a lot of trouble. I mean, I don't think there's any way to deny that, right? There's craziness right now. You see droughts and, you know, and he was talking about the salmon and dying and all that stuff. So what's the cause of all that? Well, most of the cause is, right, human-made. So wouldn't it make sense that the Sasquatch want to help us get to a different place where we can mend things and maybe go in a different direction? Become more like them, actually. My introduction to the BFRO occurred in 2006. My best friend up in Darrington was screamed at close proximity with he and 5 of his family members, ranging from age about 50 to 80, early 80s. And they spent their whole life up there hunting and fishing. I'd never heard anything like it. So when he called me the next day to report what happened, which scared them quite a bit, I said at the time, and this was when the BFRO was kind of coming on my radar, because it was on TV. I would see Jeff Meldrum. This is about the time that Jeff Meldrum was, you know, and other people. The BFRO was kind of showing up on TV. I said, call the BFRO and report it, you know, file a report. So he did. So his report is on there from October 13th, I believe it is, 2006. Anyway, Dave Ellis, an audio guy who was back then doing the investigations for the BFRO, you know, he would go out and investigate reports, Class A reports, Class B reports, all that sort of thing. And the evidence that we found, he came out the very next day after this happened, was just astounding to me. I couldn't believe that my eyes had never seen this stuff before. It wasn't on my radar. You know, quite frankly, I wasn't paying attention to footprints. I mean, it just wasn't, or twist-offs like he's measuring here. He's measuring like a 10-foot twist-off here, and none of the other trees in the forest have that, and it's fresh. And it's like, so we found footprints all around the creek, the back of the creek where the screaming came from. There must have been, I think, 4 different individuals. And we found the left foot right behind my friend's place, and we found the right foot 300 or 400 yards upriver. So we casted those. Those are the ones on the left there. And they were, smaller footprints. What, about 8 inches? How tall would that being be, 8-inch track?
6.5 times 8, 54 inches.
54 inches, so just a bit.
4.5 feet tall.
4.5 feet, okay. Little juvenile. And some of the feet, and I only put a couple of these casts in here, the nails on these they were so thick and kind of pointed. They were pointed. It was kind of creepy. It's kind of noisy, isn't it? Oh, you're trying to get some air in here. Anyway, what it did was it opened my awareness. I immediately started reading a lot of books. The first one I read was by Dr. Jeff Meldrum, because being a science person, I wanted to immerse myself in the science. And I found his book absolutely fascinating. If you've got any relatives that think you're a crackpot, like mine do, refer them to Jeff Meldrum's book. That ought to hush them up pretty quick. The other one I found very impressive at that time was The Locals, and that was by Tom Powell. He published a book about all of his BFRO investigative reports, and there was a lot of really cool stuff in there. I actually made my mom read that one. I tore right through that book. I thought it was so fascinating. Well, this was all new to me, and the learning curve was just, like this. And also Ron Moorhead's Bigfoot recordings, audio. Just fascinating stuff. So I spent a lot of time with the BFRO. We went out on a lot of expeditions together, big groups of people, which I would never do now. Solo research is the way to go. Okay, I'm just going to say that right up front. But this is kind of the thing that I was taught. You go out with a whole group of people and you walk roads in the dark, logging roads in the dark, and you holler out as loud as you can, or you hit a tree and you wait for something to return call, right? Which happens quite a bit. And I got to meet Bob Gimlin. I got to meet a lot of good people. Bobo's there, Paul, there's all kinds of people here. And my son got to learn how to ride from the best horseman probably ever, Bob Gimlin. So it was a lot of fun. But, doing all that kind of research, and I went on a lot of expeditions with those people. And by the way, I want to share with you that I was absolutely terrified. That first couple of years hanging out with these people, I thought, they are nuts. This is just absolutely nuts what these people do. Walking on a dark road with no flashlights and hollering out to this thing and getting trees pushed over at you and all this sort of stuff. I thought they're completely bonkers. But I went because I was so intrigued. I would put my tent in the middle of everybody else's tents. I wasn't one of those ones that was going to put my tent on the perimeter on the outside of camp. I thought, man, those people are brave. And now I camp alone all the time. And it just shows you how far I've come. But I got really good at casting because, I'm in dentistry and I know how to use these dental materials quite well, or at least I did. But it left me wanting more, you guys. 10 years of this was enough. It wasn't fulfilling. It's fascinating in the beginning, but after a while it's kind of same old, same old. And when I watch these expedition Bigfoot shows or finding Bigfoot shows, I get kind of a sadness almost that the research hasn't evolved to the point where these people can actually experience these beings on a real heartfelt level rather than just sending a drone up to take footage or putting trap cameras out or getting FLIR images. I used to do all that, by the way. I don't do it anymore. Because it doesn't get me to where I want to go, and I think it's actually very disrespectful. So I fantasized a lot about going alone into the wilderness because I was kind of on that thought process of, has any female ever gone into the wilderness alone for a month, like Jane Goodall or Diane Fossey, and just hang out with these beings without, well, there would certainly be a lot of fear, but overcome the fear and just hang out. Because I knew they were real. There was no doubt in my mind they were real. I read the, scientific evidence to show me that they were real. And it was very convincing. So, the good news is, you guys, and I would go, by the way, I would go off trail. I spent an enormous amount of time researching Sasquatch in those 10 years. It was almost like a second job. And even at one point, my son came to me and he said, Sasquatch is more important to you than I am. And that was when it had to stop. When my son noticed that I was spending too much time. It's a very fascinating topic. It'll kind of suck you in. But thank goodness you don't have to go up into the wilderness. This is so incredibly easy, you won't even believe it. All you have to do is all I had to do was change my behavior and my beliefs. I had to open my mind a little bit and change my energy, basically. And I'm going to teach you how to do that. Because you can attract these beings to you. And that's what you want to do. You don't want to you go in the forest and you'll be the kind of human that the Sasquatch want nothing to do with because you're putting trap cameras up. If you're trying to build a relationship with a person, would you be putting up trap cameras in their home or their bathroom? I mean, that's just rude. And I mean, honestly, I would feel completely offended if someone came into my home and not only put trap cameras up, but started flying those noisy drones around. It's just rude. It's just rude. So I'm going to teach you a different way of going about this. And by the way, we're not talking so much about habituation because the Sasquatch will habituate you. And that's what I want to talk about next. We don't habituate Sasquatch. They habituate us. And that's what I want to teach you. So here, this is probably the most important slide, or one of the most important slides I want you to understand. So you want to establish a foundation of trust to have a relationship and get close to a being. It starts with positive intent. What's your intention? And I want you guys to be thinking about this, and then at the end, let's talk about it. Because you need to find out what your intention is on a personal level. What is your intention? Are you just curious? Are you here today because you want to go squatching? My cousin calls me up and he says, "You been squatching?" And I'm like, "Oh God, I hate that term." I told you, Aaron, I don't go squatching. Putting out a vibe of respect. First of all, gratitude. Let's say you're driving to the trailhead that you're going to hike on or the campsite. Fill yourself with gratitude. If you got to think about your firstborn child or some great time you had on a vacation, this is going to set the tone for when you get out of your car, when you get to this place. I'm telling you, it works. It works so unbelievably well. You're trying to attract. Oh, by the way, you're going to attract what you put out. So wouldn't you want to put out a good vibe? Because if you're putting out a certain energy that's egotistical, for example, let's say, well, I'm going into the forest because I want to take pictures and video and I want to be rich because I'm going to prove that these beings exist. Or I want to go kill a Sasquatch and bring a body, right, to the science. What is your intention? Check that before you get involved in this research because you do not want to attract negative things. I cannot say that strongly enough. There are good and bad beings in the forest. So you want to attract a whole crowd of these good ones, which is what I do. Predictable behavior is very important. Walk the same path often as you can. Walk the same path. This will give them a chance to come put things in front of you. I'm going to show you that. Camp in the same location often, and certainly if you can, be alone. I mean, be alone as much as you can, or have small groups, say 2 people rather than 10. Okay. I was just coming from church, and I went to I don't go to church regularly, but I go when they have the Christmas concert. It's absolutely outstanding at our church in Splam, where it was. They would have the full orchestra, the choir, the whole bit, and I immerse myself into that music. I sit in the front row, and I love live music. I know you guys love live music. So I was like, after that, I went up to my research area, and I decided, you know what, and I'm all in my nice clothes and everything, and I go up, and I just want to go hang out at my usual place. This is my usual path. And there was, some things happening, but nothing too dramatic. I would, hear a branch break here or there, stuff like that. Nothing too dramatic. I get down there to this beautiful spot. It's a little bit foggy day, which I just love. And all of a sudden, a really close proximity. Talking, this native talking. And this is a a place that's in the wilderness. There were no people there. It was middle of December. I think my jaw practically hit the ground. I stopped me in my tracks. I had never heard anything like that before. So, you know, in my heart, in my intuition, I knew that was something pretty unique. Every single day that I went down to this spot after that, there was this hollering, and I'm going to play it for you. I started carrying a recorder. First it was my phone, and then I bought a real recorder because I wanted to investigate it as a scientist and figure out if it was just an animal living in the Pacific Northwest, right? So I'm hoping you guys can hear the audio. And I want you to notice that it's very playful. I would describe it as playful. Let's see if this plays. The audio it would be a little bit different every time, and I have literally, I don't even know how many recordings I have of that, because every day I would record it. And I would send it off to Dave Ellis, the guy that was a BFRO investigator who now is in the Olympic Project, and he's their audio expert. And I sent it to him, and I sent him many files. But you're going to hear more files today. I'm going to be sharing their click language, them talking in click language, drumming, stuff like that. But he put it on a what's called a spectrogram and identified it as, yeah, Judy, this is where we see, kind of the signature of where the voices kind of falls into that Sasquatch realm, because he studies many files. So I figured, I don't really want to get into being an audio expert, but I thought this was really interesting because if you look at it, you can see that there's two individuals. It's really cool to be able to see it on a visual graph like that. So every day I would go down there. A little different. I could not identify these vocals. This one you can't hear as well. This is looped. Can you guys hear it? You probably can't hear it. Yeah. Okay. It's looped. And I think there's one more here. Come on. Daytime. Every time I got to this place, which I walked with my dog every day, sometimes twice a day, without fail. So I'll let it finish here, and I want to tell you. Okay, so see where my dog is standing there? That's Buddy. Until it finishes so you can hear me. Okay. Where my dog was standing was where Combe would eventually walk up to me. So every single day, they would call, that calling would come from the same place every single day. And it was a particular spot in the forest. And I would get down there, and it would stop, or they would move away and continue calling. And it was just absolutely driving me crazy because I wanted to see what was doing it. Because it was kind of inviting, right? It didn't sound scary. That's not scary stuff. You guys have probably heard audio before that's kind of scary sounding. I have. I've heard it live in the field. Roar, like what Sabella was doing. There's free software. I wanted to share with you that if you want to get a digital recorder, I do highly recommend that you do it, and I'll tell you why. There's a lot that you begin to understand when you go camping with a digital recorder. First of all, you figure out if they're there. And they don't mind you recording audio. They didn't mind me recording audio because they very specifically talked in and did things with my audio recorder going. Now, having said that, I don't do it anymore out of respect because I'm at kind of that next level that I want to take it to the next level. And so when Kombe comes up and talks to me when I'm hanging out or I'm camping, I'm sleeping out in the wilderness, I don't want to have my audio recorder going because I want him to talk to me. And I don't want him to feel, and I certainly didn't have my audio recorder going on when he walked up to me. So these are just, kind of things to think about. But I do encourage you to carry an audio recorder. It's a lot of fun. And you see this picture to the right here, you can get through an entire 8-hour night in about an hour because it's visual. So you can just go through it depending on how much there is. I would walk this particular path, like I just said, this is the same path every single day, and then this rock showed up. Oh shoot, I was going to bring it in here. I'll let you see it if you want to see it later. And I would pass up this rock, and it kind of reminded me of those statues, are they the Moa on Easter Island, a little bit. You guys ever watch Ancient Aliens? I love that show. But it kind of had that feel to it, and I walked by it many times. And I didn't pick it up, and I actually was carrying my digital recorder, and one day on the digital recorder, as I walked by, this voice says, "Keep it." And I don't want to share that audio with you because it's only good on headphones. But it's this deep voice, and he says, "Keep it." And I sent the audio to Dave Ellis, and I said, What's he saying there? And so he enhanced it a little bit so he could hear it. He says, "Judy, is there something on your path that maybe is a gift?" And I was like, I knew exactly what he was talking about because this was the only thing on my regular path that had changed at that time. So I picked it up, and this rock I have found, like Brian Bland, I think even has one that's very similar to this. And I've seen other people, like if I post a picture of it on my Facebook page or something like that, other people will start to post their pictures of their rock, their Sasquatch Rock. So be on the lookout for a Sasquatch Rock. These beings can, and if they're really wanting you to have one of these rocks, they'll put it in front of you. Okay, it's a cool thing. I love my rock. The other thing that you're going to see, really pay attention when you're walking on that same path every day. And by the way, you don't have to walk a long distance. Just walk the same path every day. Walk somewhere where you can be alone. I know that's getting harder and harder to achieve these days. There's a lot of people in the forest due to COVID. But start noticing that the rocks, the boulders are being moved. Big boulders are being moved. Who's doing that, right? I mean, good gosh. I should really show you what size these boulders are. I started noticing these things. I'm like, well, who on earth would be doing that? First of all, there's nobody walking that logging road. Not very often if they are, unless it was hunting season. And so I started noticing these things. And I don't know, maybe Tom can share what he thinks that maybe it's the juveniles sort of playing with you a little bit, seeing if you actually notice these subtle changes. I don't know. It's kind of fun stuff. And one day I'm on the Dungeness River, and this is completely off trail. It's one of my favorite trails where I go, and I actually pray every day, or did at that time. And my prayer log had been lost because it washed away due to high water. And here this bank access is about a 10-foot drop from right behind where my dog is. And I go to my special log, that I went to every day, and it was gone. And after the waters had receded, this rock, the water didn't come up that high. So I was sort of trying to figure out, okay, we'll put this big rock here. And I noticed there was a bunch of red rocks in the river, big giant boulders in the river that were red. And I just was trying to picture somebody going down there and getting a big red rock and putting it in the trail. It just made no sense. So you just use your critical thinking skills that this might be them reaching out to you in their own way, right? This is a method of communication. If they're going to put stuff in your path, pay attention. Here's the other thing. I was hiking one of my favorite trails, the upper Grey Wolf River Trail up there on the out there on the Olympic Peninsula. And all of a sudden, I had to go to the bathroom like right now. And this is a fairly long hike. There was no way I was going to wait till I got to the bottom. I had to go now. And I dropped my pack and I ran straight into the forest to go to the bathroom to relieve myself. And I ran right into this. Well, it's a little bit odd that I had to go to the bathroom right then. I never would have noticed this glyph, this stick structure. We call it a stick structure. I call it Sasquatch art. No, it's actually, if you look more closely at it, from the 5 years that I've been learning this language that they've been teaching me, it's a symbolic language with sticks and rocks and pine cones and every kind of thing in nature that you can find they will use to talk to you. This has meaning. And I'm not going to share with you what it means because it's over your head right now. But I assure you that this has meaning and that I was intended to see it. If you notice footprints, make sure that you're looking at the small ones too. I think there was a gentleman up here sharing some of those smaller ones with Tom. I think that sometimes we tend to overlook the smaller ones. And a lot of times you will find one footprint. And I used to think that people thought that was so special. I used to think they were crackpots. I was like, I can't remember what research it was. But now I'm getting single footprints. Or I started getting single. It's kind of their way of letting you know they're there. It's kind of like, here, I'm here. I want you to see this and know that I'm here, in my opinion. So the one there in the snow, that was on my regular path. You know, there was this smaller footprint. I didn't measure it or anything. This is the day that everything changed for me, you guys. It was April 27th, 2016. I had gone down to that spot where they called me down every day. I call it, I go, oh my God, they're calling me down again. Because I'd have to go down this long hill. It was about, a little over a mile to get to this spot in Port Angeles. It's up in the forest of Port Angeles where I lived. It was only 2 miles from my house. So that's why I did it every day. This was a different day for me. I just had this, I was so sick and tired of them calling me down and then moving away. So I decided to just sit there. By the way, I was taking audio the whole time. And this is what's really cool, is that I not only have visual of this anomaly here, and anybody could study this and tell you this isn't something that because I'm no good at Photoshop anyway, I don't even know how to use it. But isn't that fascinating? So I got audio of that, but I also got audio of my personal experience, which was very weird. And some of this stuff gets really personal, and you're going to hear my reaction. But I want you to know, I didn't see this when I took the picture. I felt weird. I was having trouble breathing. I said, I just want to learn from you. And I was very sincere. I said, I just want to learn from you. Will you teach me? So the key here is I asked for them to teach me. I had never asked before. And I want you to know how important it is to ask. That's huge. So I asked for them to teach me, and all of a sudden it was and I heard this thud, and the energy just completely changed. And my dog, that's another way that you notice that there's something weird going on. Your dog or your cat, whatever you have with you, the animals know. They pick this stuff up so easy. And all of a sudden, he just acted like he was all lethargic, and that was completely out of place for my dog, who was very rambunctious. He laid down. He looked like he was about to pass out. And I was like, what is wrong with my dog? So here's the audio of this actual, what looks like, how would you describe this energy stream? Here we go. It's loot. You can hear me taking pictures. Did you hear the little click of my camera while that was playing? So here's what I was doing. I stood up and I knew something was going on. So have the presence of mind to take photos. Certainly, if something feels weird, you feel something weird, start taking photos. So here's what I started doing. I was just like, there's something going on here. I didn't know I had that till I got home, by the way. It went to the next slide. Hold on, I got one more audio for you to listen to. I didn't know I got that picture till I got home, and it was like, oh God, this goes along with the experience that I had. So let me share the audio from how I felt. I didn't really talk about how heavy and how hard it was for me to breathe and just how weird it felt. But as I walked out of there, this is me talking, okay?
Is that you making that noise? Why is Buddy staring? It's not bad. Come on, let's go. Let's go. Come on.
I could hear him calling in the distance.
Oh, electric. Oh. Is that you? Oh, God. Oh, my God, I feel weird. I'm tingling all over my body right now.
Okay, that's, as I walked out, I probably got about quarter mile out, and I almost had to drop to my knees. I was so dizzy, but I had to call my friend for support. Now, I didn't know any of this stuff. I had never experienced anything like this before, so it was a little scary. Could you hear the fear? I didn't know what was happening to me. But since that time, it happens all the time. So pretty much every forest that I go into, I get vibrated. It's the same thing. Sometimes it's more intense. I want to talk more about that. So what I try to do is debunk this. Being a scientific person, I always try to debunk things. And so this is me. Someone on Facebook, after I posted this picture, they said, well, it's just a hair on the lens. And he said, boom, like that was the answer. No, that wasn't the answer. I tried to debunk it with a hair on the lens as best I could, and that was the best I could come up with. I had the exact same lighting at the exact same time of day, as you can see. Samantha taught me that. Tom. You can see the anomaly on the left there. Again, I didn't know I had gotten these photos until I got home. You've got to look at your photographs and see if there's kind of this really sort of foggy look to it. This one in particular has kind of a purple fog. Again, I went back the same time of day, same lighting, took the same exact photo, and couldn't recreate that photo. So you can pick up energy distortions on your camera. I pick them up all the time if there happens to be something going on. So research area number 2. This is where I really, things started to really develop into more of a relationship, okay? When I would arrive at this place, this is when I first started doing glyph, symbolic language, glyph language that Tom actually coined that term, I believe, glyphs, using sticks and rocks and things in nature to talk and communicate. Every time I would get there, my body would be intensely vibrated. So, by the way, this was really up in the middle of nowhere. And being a solo researcher, it took me a long time to get used to being vibrated every time I showed up. And it wasn't just them vibrating me. I would hear bipedal footsteps, and I would hear hollering. So it was like there was a party going on. Every time I showed up. And you know what was really weird about this is I always had my dog with me. And I want to talk to you about dogs. My dog didn't hear any of it. I could have bipedal footsteps 35 feet from me, and I would look at my dog, and he had zero reaction. And my dog, it was one of the most protective dogs you ever met, because that's his breed, Doberman Rottweiler. So this was when I was kind of first learning about this energy, this vibration, and also that my dog the Sasquatch have the ability to sort of mute them out of the experience. I don't know how they do it, but I've witnessed it many times. We're going to talk more about dogs. So here I took that rock that they gave me, and I added a little rock to, can you guys see this pictures okay? Mm-hmm. I added this is the Judy rock, this is the Sasquatch rock, I call it. Okay, and I didn't know what I was saying initially, but I had seen others get glyphs like this. This A has meaning to it. This has meaning. But I just wanted to recreate something that I had seen other people doing or receiving, which was this A glyph. And I noticed the dates, and this is 2 hours from my house. And so I would go out there, put a glyph down, put some apples down, come back a few days later and check my glyph area, right? And that particular response, which has a couple of different meanings to it, but see how the Sasquatch rock and the Judy rock are kind of tucked together, and then the sticks in that, like, thank you. So let me just zoom in on the Judy rock and the Sasquatch rock. So there's a zoomed up picture, and it looks like our heads are joined. The little Judy rock is kind of a skin tone, smaller representation of like this bigger gray rock. It's kind of funny because it turns out Combe was gray, when he walked up to me. It's kind of the same color of that rock, actually. So I thought, well, that's interesting. Yeah.
Was that rock light gray or dark gray when you found it?
Well, it was dark gray because it was wet.
Okay.
But when it's dry like this, it's kind of a lighter gray. Yeah. Depends on if it's wet. You'll see some wet pictures of it in here. It changes color. The other thing that I was doing up in this area was putting offerings, food offerings behind my camp area. So there was this giant log that I would walk out on and leave a plate of food. And the really cool thing about this is that they would always leave me at least one. So we know probably that animals wouldn't do that, bears, raccoons, whatever's in the forest. And I would leave, but you can see that just a diamond-shaped glyph. Again, I didn't know what I was saying. I was actually running out of ideas. I really didn't know what to put down. So the next morning you can see that the glyph has changed and they left me one sandwich. This one's even more interesting. I just put 3 sticks that look kind of like a teepee. Again, running out of ideas. By the way, there's a lot of stuff going on between this stuff as well. And I get this glyph on the actual plate saying thank you. And they left me more sandwiches. And this was about the time where they were kind of telling me, we don't need your food. This was more about me having fun, right? I was lovingly making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. It was like kind of the favorite part of my camping experience was as darkness would, as dusk would come, I would, get out the peanut butter and jelly and the Dave's Killer bread and make them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches with all organic everything, right? Because Tom was talking about don't feed them peanut butter, and I was sitting in the back of the room going, oh dear, oh hell, I don't know. I was just doing what others had done. So I had heard about others putting out peanut butter and honey sandwiches, and I heard that the Sasquatch really like it. So this was the response I was getting, and again, I've got so many before and after pictures, you guys. I can't share them all. We don't have time, but I kind of wanted to show you some of the best ones here. So my very special birthday in 2016 turned out to be not so special. But I want to tell you that in the weeks leading up to my special birthday, I was getting I didn't see it at the time clearly, but I was getting nudged by these beautiful beings in the forest to not bring my dog. And I don't know how many of you are dog owners, but you take your dog with you everywhere. Your dog is your baby. You know, I raised him since he was a baby. So I took him with me everywhere. There was no way I would go anywhere without my dog, especially camping. And especially to the wilderness area where I'm being vibrated by Sasquatch and I'm having conversations and I'm out there alone. I've got this Rottweiler Doberman dog that I feel protected by, especially against humans. I was probably more afraid of humans because I don't carry a gun. And you know, this is in the way out in the wilderness of the whole rainforest. And I'll tell you, there's some weird people out there. There could be some pretty strange people. By the way, speaking about that, one of the things that I do when I arrive at my research areas, the first thing I do is I check my glyph. And I check it to have them let me know if it's okay for me to stay. And oftentimes, it's not okay for me to stay, and they boot me out. But this isn't, that's currently now because they don't want me there because there's I feel something going on there that they don't want me to intersect, with humans. I'm not talking about Sasquatch. Because there was a lot of really strange things going on out there for a while, but now it's all good. So I go out there with my dog, and in previous trips, every time I would arrive, pretty much by this time, May 27th, every time I would arrive, I would get this icky feeling, and I would hear this loud thud, or I would hear a very large branch break, or I would hear a tree get pushed over. That's a method of communication. Basically, when you add all those things together, it was a feeling of, we don't want you here. We don't want you here. And oftentimes I would leave. I would start to unload my stuff, and then I would get this icky feeling. The vibe wasn't good, and I'd just load back up and go to a different camp spot altogether. It was about my dog. And it's not that they don't like dogs and that they're worried that Buddy's going to attack them. This is what I would learn later. It's about me. And me paying attention and learning and being able to learn undistracted. It's about distraction. Solo research is the best, including not having a dog. So we put out this glyph, we put these things out. I had my son put this stuff out, these 3 sticks. I just told him, put out whatever you want. And we put some mint out, and then we put raspberries in there, which I didn't get a photograph of, a before photograph of the raspberries. I was just trying different things to see what they liked. At about 10:30, 11 o'clock that night, it was dark, we were sitting around the campfire. Just the most horrific, intense screaming that I've ever heard in my life vibrated my whole body. And by the way, the screaming was coming from this area where the food was, which was only maybe 30 feet from camp, from where we were sitting. So it was very terrifying indeed. All of a sudden, my dog comes flying out of the camper, almost broke the door on his way out, and off into the darkness he went, straight up the hill. It sounded like he was following something big. That's what it sounded like. And I got to tell you, it was like my dog's life flashed before my eyes. I thought for sure that they were going to kill him. He was being a guard dog. But this was a lesson, was what it was. A very painful lesson, but it was a lesson that I needed to learn. Sometimes they will teach you things in a dramatic way because you're not paying attention or you're in denial. I was in denial. I was certainly paying attention, maybe not as fully as I could, but I was in denial about my dog because I didn't want it to be true that I had to leave my dog at home. So the next morning, we find this. The glyph has changed. They didn't like the raspberries or the mint. That stayed there. They don't need that stuff. They don't need it. There's plenty of berries in the forest in late May. Salmon berries and huckleberries. So we went over to check the log, our other glyph area. And I had my son lay down, again, we didn't know what we were saying or doing. We were running out of ideas. I was running out of ideas. But you see the before is Sasquatch Rock, the Judy Rock facing the Sasquatch Rock. And here's a little figurine of my dog Buddy. And he's standing up. And I know this is hard to see because it's on a log. I actually put a red collar on it. It's just a little plastic dog. Because I was feeling like I needed them to tell me directly with a glyph that my dog wasn't welcome. So that night, we get screamed. We were so terrified, you guys. We holed up in the camper that night, and we were just like, what? I mean, it was so loud. But again, we weren't in any danger. It was just a lesson. But the next morning, look at the buddy dog. He's laying down. And the Judy Sasquatch Rock, or the Judy Rock, is facing away, is turned away. And so he's basically just teaching him a lesson that, you know, I thought it meant, oh my God, they're going to kill my dog. That's what I thought. So, and notice that they didn't take the apples. So this is the other way that they teach, is you put food out or you put offerings out, and if they change the glyph and do not take the food, this is important, you are doing something they don't like. It's just a lesson. No, we don't want your offering until you correct this behavior. I've seen it many times. I get corrected a lot, you guys. We've had many fights. So, let's see. So this is the glyph that was left there. I left there and I vowed to never come back. On May 28th, the day after my birthday. I had it. And that was when I called Tom and I said, Tom, I don't know what to do. I guess I'm just going to have to wait for my dog to pass because I am not leaving my dog at home. And I don't have anyone to care for him anyway. And that was when my mentor, Tom, said, there's got to be a way. He says, there's got to be a way. You've got to figure out a way. This is important. Well, I ended up finding a way, but I still kept bringing my dog. Well, I was in denial. I didn't listen to him right away. And I come back, and my rock had been removed from underneath, or from the glyph entirely. So my rock is here. I come back. I show up 3 days later. I still have my dog, by the way, but I've got him on a leash. So I've got my dog on a leash, and I'm thinking, well, maybe this will be okay, because he'll not be able to chase after... he won't be able to hurt any of the juvenile Sasquatch or whatever, and maybe this will be okay. So it was bargaining. It was like bargaining. I still wasn't accepting what was going on. And I got my dog on a leash when I walk up to this cliff. And by the way, he's saying, this is the Sasquatch Rock going forward. This is actually the Sasquatch stick. So he was trying to define, he was making definitions about what these sticks meant, and this was the first time he did that. But I had my dog on a leash, and this chipmunk, I kid you not, and my dog with squirrels and chipmunks, if he sees, he's dead, he's passed now, if he sees a squirrel or a chipmunk, you've got to hang on for dear life to the leash, or he's going to rip both shoulders out or an arm out. And so when the squirrel or chipmunk came closer and it was chattering, I was like, oh, shoot. And I tried to put my phone down, and I grabbed the leash, and I'm hanging on for dear life, and he's got one of these choke collar things on with spikes on it, and I'm thinking, oh God, this is going to be awful. And this chipmunk came right up to us within about 3 feet and cussed at us. He was cussing at my dog, and my dog didn't see it, didn't react to it. It was like it wasn't even happening. And so I've had people tell me, is your dog deaf? Maybe you should get his hearing tested. No, he's not deaf. We did put him through those tests, and he was quite well. But it was kind of confirmation to me that the Sasquatch were showing me what they're capable of as far as muting out the dog. The dog doesn't even have to experience what's going on. Have you ever been out with a friend and one of you hears a Sasquatch scream and the other one doesn't? That's another thing. Sometimes that scream was meant for you and it wasn't meant for the other person. That happens all the time. Okay, so here I was, had my dog on a leash. They're sending chipmunks up to me, and I'm thinking, oh God, and he doesn't even pay any attention to them. Blew my mind. So that night, I put out a glyph. I'm still trying to amend my relationship. I still have my dog, and I put out this don't put out a glyph like this. Tom taught me, don't put that glyph out. It has very special meaning to them. It's kind of like an asterisk. Don't put that one out. But that's not why they didn't answer this glyph. So they changed the glyph. As you can see here, it changed. And this means a path for one. They don't want my dog there. I actually sent this glyph to Tom, and he helped me. He immediately picked up on the meaning, because this was before I knew what all this stuff meant. And I thank God that I had Tom at this time, you guys, because this was very, very emotional time for me. It was really a hard time. And I had to let my dog go from this whole scene. So they don't take the apples if you're doing behavior that they don't like. Again, don't put this one out. I still didn't really understand what I was putting out, but so I put this out. I left. I come back a few days later, and this is what I walk up to. And my rock reappeared under the Sasquatch Rock, and it took me a while to figure out what this glyph meant. Of course, I know what it means now. But you can see that my rock is tucked underneath the Sasquatch Rock. And that is, in my opinion, I immediately got that. It meant protection. And so what this whole glyph means is we've been protecting you. This is past. Left is past. So we've been protecting you. And the stick there is actually represents me. So at this point, they're teaching me what the rocks and the sticks mean, and also what the direction means. Left has 4 different meanings, actually. So anyway, that's more advanced stuff, and I'm not going to teach you right now. I went up to this glyph, and I actually had my niece with me when I walked up to this glyph. I got there on June 7th. She walked up, and I said, let me show you my glyph area. This is what I walked up to. Now remember, what I left was that. What I walked up to was this. And so I'm trying to decipher this glyph, and I'm kind of getting a clue that these sticks, each individual stick represents me, one represents my dog, and one represents the Sasquatch. And I'm looking at that first glyph right here, and I think that it means, yeah, you can bring your dog here. Talk about wishful thinking. Oh, geez. Talk about wishful thinking. So we start walking out of the glyph area. We're going back to camp to set up camp. And all of a sudden, there's all this hollering, chat, all this commotion, and a tree gets pushed over. And my niece goes, what's that? She goes like, what's that? The way she said it. I said, that's them. And I rolled my eyes because I knew what it meant. It meant that I didn't understand the glyph and I needed to go back. So I go back, and this is what I get back to. So they changed it. And so basically, in another way, they were trying to tell me that Buddy gets between us. You see the symbolism there? They're trying to tell me that Buddy actually takes us backwards from having a heart connection. I know what all these glyphs mean now. It took me a heck of a long time to figure this stuff out. But this is left in this particular case is, negative. He's not allowing us to get close to you, a connection, an undistracted connection. Here, Buddy is getting in between us. And then I still don't get it, and that evening they changed it again. So there it is, changed again, and in the morning they changed it again because I still wasn't getting it. This is called deep denial. By the way, I shared this glyph, this whole conversation with Dr. Meldrum, and I said, Dr. Meldrum, they really do talk to us with sticks and rocks, and I can teach this to you. And a lot of people don't want to learn it. I think it's fascinating. Again, didn't see how they didn't take the apples because I was still not getting it. So talk about who's habituating who, right? It's about who's habituating who. So I asked a question about Buddy. I said, this is me asking, can Buddy and I go forward with you? And I even had a little Buddy rock here. This is the Buddy rock. Can we go forward with you? This is the Sasquatch stick. Put out the 4 apples. It went unanswered. They were ignoring me, refused to answer me. It was like, I was getting snubbed. But that wasn't what they wanted me to ask. And so I figured out what to ask. So here's what I asked. I put the Sasquatch stick, the Judy stick, and the Sasquatch rock, the Judy rock. And I said, can we, you and I, without Buddy, took the Buddy stick out, can you and I go forward? I put that out. This is what I got. So notice they changed the glyph. The rock is going forward. The 2 sticks are now intertwined. And now they changed the glyph, but they said no more food. This was their way of saying no more. You don't need to keep feeding us apples. Stop it. So this is when I stopped doing it. But I want to show you what we suppose is under there. Show you a close-up. There's the Judy rock under the Sasquatch rock. Again, protection. Means protection, but it also, you can see the heads are joined. They wanted me to join them in kind of a higher level of the house, basically. Notice how the sticks are interjoined here, and the Sasquatch stick has a little arm around me. And my silly friend Pat, who's a guide out there on the peninsula, he's like, He's like, Judy, there's no such thing, a Sasquatch doesn't have one arm. He was insinuating that that wasn't an arm. There's kids here, so. He was very afraid for me. He kept saying to me, why is he spending so much time with you? You know, what's going on here? I assure you guys, I really want you to know that they're incapable of inappropriate behavior like that. So this wasn't sexual, and I never thought it was, but this is what fear, human fear of people that don't understand will come up with in their dirty little minds. It's kind of funny. The partially eaten apple, I have no idea. Maybe someone could tell me what teeth marks these are. I didn't bother to bag it up and try to get DNA or anything like that, but this was the time for me to stop feeding them. Okay, you're going to find this fascinating. I recorded the click language. By the way, have you ever heard click language in the forest and not been able to, like, what is that? You guys ever heard it before? Okay, I'm going to play it for you because when I play it for people, then after it's... Hold on a second. That's a looped audio. Sorry, they're a little bit out of order. This was one particular night when my niece and her little girl, who she had in bed, and her little baby woke up and was hungry or whatever, and I had the recorder going nearby. So you can hear, we picked up the audio of the word Hopi. It sounds like Hopi. You guys hear that okay in the back? Okay. This is the click language that I picked up in audio. By the way, I have literally hundreds of hours of audio, just amazing. Did you hear that boom in the beginning? I got a lot of audio of that. It's like it always starts out with this big boom. I don't know what that is. Do you remember what Tom was talking about? If you were here earlier, he was talking about the click language. I have picked up so much audio of that. It's a very stealthy, interesting thing that they do. So be aware of that next time you're camping. You might actually pick up on that. Because now I'm making it a part of your awareness. But here's... Oops. Right. Did you want to hear it again, or okay? So I did some research. I hope this plays okay. I'm on internet here on click language, and it's one of the oldest, really, Aboriginal languages that uses click language, exactly like Tom was talking about earlier. Yeah, I practice it all the time. I have no idea what I'm saying. It's really fun, though. He's over here doing his thing. It's a lot of fun, you guys, and. I found out later that a lot of children like to do kind of different clicks and pops and stuff. Maybe it's something that comes natural. I don't know. But here, what I want to play for you is an actual click language in South Africa. I don't know if it's going to play, so let's see if it plays. I'm only going to play a part of this very short video.
So really there are 11 languages spoken within Southern Africa.
Yes.
And you're Xhosa.
Yes.
You speak Xhosa, the wonderful clicking.
Click.
How many clicks are there in your language?
There is 5 clicks in my language. Awesome.
Do them for me. I like that.
Just to give you an idea, they actually add other things to that click language, though, to give it even more depth. Anyway. And I've heard kind of 2 different versions of the click language between the Sasquatch, too. And I don't know what that means. And I don't think, for some reason, there isn't any research going on with that. I've talked to a language expert. His name's Scott Nelson. He's the, what do you call that language expert? Cryptolinguist. Yeah. My son almost did that in the U.S. Air Force. I was like, yeah, do it. And then you can help me understand this stuff. But he didn't. You know, as far as your energy in camp, well, now remember, I'm out there alone, so I'm kind of bored. So I would bring a little speaker with me, and I would play music, and I would sing, and I actually taught myself how to dance while I was doing research. It doesn't mean that I don't go to the forest to cry, because I quite often do. When there's some hard stuff going on in my life, I go out there. The first place I want to go is to my therapy place, which is the forest, especially the Hoh rainforest, and just kind of allow myself to just cry. It's a healthy thing to do. But the more that you can just sit around camp and relax and it's really getting into your heart energy, if you will, and opening up that joy, opening up to joy, they're going to come in. They want to hang out with you. I guarantee it. You may even hear them singing. I've heard them singing. I've heard them actually singing to my music. If I play a particular song that they like, I played this one song by Judy Collins. It's called The Whale Song. Anybody ever heard that song? Oh my God, it's like haunting. I played that song. My friend actually played it. He brought it out and he's like, oh, let's listen to this song. He started it up and all of a sudden they were vibrating my whole body with, it's confirmation. Yeah, we like this song. By the way, that's the other way they communicate. It's not just with sticks and rocks. It's vibrating your body, because vibrating your body is a way of them telling you that they're there, but also kind of giving you a confirmation and a Sasquatch hug, if you will. But one night when I was recording, I picked up this audio of drumming. And I'm a drummer. I've been playing drums my whole life, and so I can really appreciate, even in this little riff that he's playing, how cool it is. And I realized when I listened to it very in depth that they're not using sticks and stumps and rocks to play the drums. This is actually done with their mouth, I believe. And they mimic everything in the forest. Why not? Why wouldn't they be able to mimic musical instruments? I even have a recording of what I believe is them mimicking a ukulele, for example. So here's the audio of the drumming. I don't have the ukulele. Do you hear the different textures in there? It's kind of cool, isn't it? And I can appreciate it, like I said, but I'm wondering, how do they do that with their mouth? Have you ever heard that bird from, is it Australia, that can mimic like the sound of a chainsaw or a camera shutter? These beings are living in the forest, for millions of years. I would imagine you would develop some pretty good skills mimicking everything in the forest. But also, drums. That was amazing to me, you guys. Okay, so I showed up on July 5th, and this was the glyph that was waiting for me. And I want to tell you that you can't take these glyphs out of context. Tom and I were talking about it's very important. What was going on with Judy when she arrived at her camp to get this glyph? Well, what was going on with me was I was experiencing a lot of fear. And still, when I would drive into this place, I wasn't sure if I actually wanted to spend the night alone. And I also really, inside, there was a part of me that wanted to sleep out, outside of my camper or outside of my tent, and I was too terrified to do that. And I really felt like I should get out of my comfort zone, because they were always around me, and I was like, okay, I kind of like to get close to you, so I want to show you how much I trust you. So what I did, so I get there and they're saying, this basically says you're blocking forward progress. We're trying to go forward and you're blocking. See, that's my stick going left. There's Sasquatch Rock going right. It didn't take long to figure out what that meant. So I allowed myself to be vulnerable for the first time. Not like I'm not vulnerable enough hanging out in a tent or a camper or hiking with these beings, right? But this was an important step for me. It wasn't about them, it was about me. So I needed to learn to be vulnerable and to show absolute trust. This was a huge step, you guys. I fell asleep with the campfire going. I did not have the recorder going. And I told them, I trust you with my life. And it sent a strong message. It really did. And this, again, it was more of a step for me. But it was showing that I trusted them enough to come up. I basically invited them to come up and interact with me in the middle of the night. And that was the vibe that I put out. I'm I'm inviting you to come interact with me. And sure enough, they did. And that was the first time, that was the first time that Kombe had walked up to me and actually, in the middle of the night, touched me on my left shoulder. I felt a big paw on my left shoulder, and my whole upper body vibrated so intensely. I've never experienced it. It was just my upper body where he touched me. And I woke up, and then I got up that morning, because I fell right back asleep after he did it. I didn't have any fear while it was going on. It was the weirdest thing. It was actually quite comforting, if I could put it that way. I didn't feel any fear that night. And I got up that morning and I felt like $1,000,000. It was like, God, what was that? I felt like Superwoman. I was like, I had more energy than I knew what to do with. I didn't even need to drink coffee that morning. It was like they charged my battery or something. So I would do this night after night. I would sleep out in the open because I wanted to invite interaction, right? And this is when things really started to get interesting. And this is when he would actually come and talk in my left ear. And he wouldn't just say one or two words. He would talk and on and on and on. And it was the most beautiful language I've ever heard. It wasn't click language. It was like a Native American language. And it sounded almost like a prayer, but it also sounded like an elder grandfather, like an elder Native American grandfather. And that's kind of how I think of him now, by the way. But I'm going to tell you right now, and this makes people uncomfortable, but it's true. They can speak English if they prefer to or if they want to. He'll say short things to me like, one time he said to me, "You're better than that, honey." Just as clear as can be, "You're better than that, honey." In the middle of the night, I'm laying there, and this deep, beautiful voice that's very calming says, "You're better." Well, it's because I was doing something really dumb. And I won't get into how personal that is. It had to do with my best friend not treating me well, and so I was being all upset about that. And he's telling me that you're better than this, honey. So I get up the next morning, and you saw the glyph the night before. You're blocking forward progress. The night after, that's the glyph. And you notice that the Sasquatch Rock is going forward, and there is scat in the glyph again. Can anybody identify this scat? Does that look like raccoon to you, or anybody identify that? I still don't know. Well, do you notice that the glyph, it's actually in the glyph and it's going forward? So notice how the sticks have changed. Now I've got his arm around me again. But the cool thing about this glyph, and I didn't know until after this, is that this is requesting a face-to-face. And so I was feeling it, and I decided, you know what, I trust you enough. I want to see you now. I didn't want to see him before this. I was too scared. I mean, I had to get over a lot of fear just to camp up there alone. I'll be darned if I wanted to see one. I didn't. The sticks and the rocks were enough, leaving food out, that sort of thing. But after spending the night out and experiencing the vibration, that it was okay, I was like, you know what, I'm ready to see you now. So I took their rock and I put it facing my rock. I mean, is that pretty clear symbolic language? I'm asking a question. I want to see you now. Can we have a face-to-face? This is a question. I put our two sticks together. I put his arm around mine. I said, let's go forward. Take me forward. I want to see you now. And I come back, and that was on 7:15, and I checked the glyph on 7:16 in the morning, and it's now changed. And this is basically accepting. Notice that the sticks are apart at the top, and they're joined at the bottom. This means face-to-face, and I've had it many times now. That's why I know what it means. But I was like, holy cow. He said, yes. Now what do I do? Be careful what you wish for. Holy cow. It took me 2 days to recover from my face-to-face. I want to play the audio. Again, I put his face in here just so you can kind of get an idea of what he looks like. He's actually quite striking, quite handsome dude. He's 8 feet tall. He's gray, like I said. But he's got a Roman nose. I want to have someone draw him. I don't dare try to take his picture because, you see, if you try to take a picture, then you just ruin the experience, and you're not going to get the experience, quite frankly. It's not like they want to be posted on YouTube and Facebook and all this. So Bob Gimlin, I took him down to that research area in Port Angeles where all the hollering was going on, all those experiences of being vibrant, all that stuff was going on, right? And it took me 2 weeks to figure out where we were going to have our face-to-face. It took 2 weeks, and it was excruciating because I thought he was just going to jump out. And like I'm walking on a trail, and I thought, I was like, please don't do that. Now, Tom's teacher did something entirely different than my teacher did, and I'll let him maybe share that experience. He had a much easier time. But you know, the thing about it is, it's a very individualized curriculum. And I quite frankly can't figure out why he made mine so scary. But you see this tree, kind of see this tree behind Bob Gimlin, and this is a little bit of a slope downhill. But what you notice is that this is a lot of vegetation here, right? And I'm an avid boonie stomper, so I'm used to like breaking through stuff like this to get to a honey hole to do some fishing. But this stuff was especially thick. And this dude, Combe planned this out pretty well. So I just want to play a few minutes of the audio, and then we'll move on to the next slide. It's very, very personal. I want you to know. I took audio after he walked up to me. I wasn't going to dare take it while he was doing it because I didn't want to ruin the experience, and I wanted to meet him. So this is the very personal audio. I know you guys, it's getting long in time here. How's everybody doing? If you need a break, let me know. You all right back there? Okay. All right. Again, this is very personal.
Okay, I just came out. That was the most amazing experience of my life. I think I'm missing some time here. No, I was down there for about 40 to 45 minutes. As soon as I sat down, heavy bipedal walking coming from in front of me to my right, and then moving to my right, and that went on for what seemed like an eternity, and I just sat there, and it was loud. He was really on purpose breaking branches and really stepping hard, big, heavy footfalls. And then he came around, and I stood up because my heart was about ready to just explode. So I stood up, and I just looked over, and I heard what sounded like two of them to my left and behind me coming up to me. And this chipmunk was just going nuts above me, just going crazy. Never heard a chipmunk that loud. So it kind of made me laugh, and I was kind of talking to him. And I was like, what's your problem? He was just cussing and footfalls keep coming closer and closer. And then they stopped. And I just waited. I stood there looking over. And he was probably 50 yards away at that point. Or maybe a little further. And then I walked over to the road. I stood there, put my pack down, and just stood there.
The road's right here where I'm standing.
And he just came walking up. And I thought my heart was just going to explode. It was going 100 miles an hour. And I heard something like a deer or something go running out of there as he came through. And I thought whatever was running out there was going to run right toward me, but it didn't. And then he just kept walking toward me, and all of a sudden I saw the top of his head and his eyes and his forehead just briefly. Like his top of his head touched this tree limb. He was so tall. Oh my God, he was so tall. Oh, in charcoal gray. So I saw the top of his head just touch that tree limb. and move it. And then I briefly saw him looking at me. I saw his eyes. And I just felt like I shouldn't stare. So I kind of looked away a little bit. Kind of put a tree sort of between us so I wasn't like staring right at him. And then he just stopped. And he was only maybe 35 feet at the most. 30 feet. And some really heavy, really heavy brush. I could make out his big body in there. So then I moved myself to the left so that I could look again, and I couldn't really see his face. And he just stood there. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm just telling him I love you and thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. And I trust you. And I love you. And I just kept saying that. And I thought my heart was going to explode. But then everything went really quiet. And I just stood there, just kind of looking away because I didn't want to keep staring at him. Oh, gunshot went off over there. Okay, I just came out.
Oops. I'm going to stop right there. One thing I failed to mention on the audio, it's always a very emotional thing for me to listen to that because it was a very, you don't know how you're going to react. You don't know how this is going to make you feel. And I thought he was going to walk right through those bushes, but what happened was as he was coming, his whole body was pushing those thick stickers, and they were vibrating as he was pushing his big body through. And as he stood there, and I failed to mention this too, so I thought he was going to just explode right through that thick stuff and just walk right up to me. So you have to understand, I feel like I almost fainted. I think I almost stroked out, to be quite honest with you. But you don't know what you don't know. You don't know how this is going to go. The other thing that he did when he stopped, and I know that he stopped because there's no way that I could have handled more. There's just no way. I would have stroked out. Is that he started talking in his click language. I could hear him talking to one behind me. And I was like, oh my God, they're talking about me. What are they saying? They're talking about me. There's more in the audio, but in the interest of time here, I want to keep going. And if you want to hear the rest of it, which is only another 5 minutes or so, we can do that. But I had to call my best friend, of course, that night. I told my best friend, I told my son what happened, the people closest to me, my family. I was rather almost like traumatized because it was almost, again, Tom and I have very different experiences, but there's something just really otherworldly or stressful about a Sasquatch walking up to you. No matter how prepared you are or think you are. And I don't know how many of you had this occur. So the next day I went to visit my friend Ron in Darrington, my best friend, and I was sitting on this log on the Sauk River, and I decided to put a glyph out, one for them and one for me, and put it together. And I come back, and I'm out there kind of crying because my carotids hurt so bad. It took me at least 2 or 3 days to recover from this, by the way. And that's, and I'm a different person. Maybe you won't have that experience. And it's not a bad thing. It just is what it is. So I go up to my friend's place. We're up all night kind of having drinks, talking about it. I'm still sort of overwhelmed. And I'm noticing that my carotid arteries are just hurting from this experience. My blood pressure must have been really high for that to occur. I have never experienced it. And I used to jump out of planes. I climb mountains. I've climbed Rainier a couple of times. I do a lot of really high adrenaline things with my life, scuba diving. But I had never experienced anything to this level. So I'm in recovery. I put that out at 9 a.m. I say my little prayers and put out my gratitude. Thank you, Combe. I come back a few hours later. This is the most amazing glyph. That little piece of bark that's really thin like paper was wrapped around my head, the head of my stick. The stick represents your body. And I was like, all I was doing was trying to picture a Sasquatch with these giant fingers doing that. I was thinking to myself, I can't even do that. I wouldn't even be able to do that. It's so delicate. It was so delicate. So you notice that our bodies are apart and our heads are joined, and there's meaning behind that. So, so jumping forward. Let's jump forward now. That was my experience in 2016. Since then, the glyphs have become very complex. This will come later in a later lecture, but you've got to understand what's going on now, and that's the first year, and it was a learning curve that was really steep. That first year of learning with them was just, every day. People were asking me, are you writing about this? Are you journaling? I said, yeah, as best I can. It was hard to keep up because there was something happening every day. I would be spending all my time writing. So it got kind of tiresome. But what I figured out is that they're always with me in my research areas. This is up in Port Angeles, this is the whole rainforest, and this is Darrington. And this is when I started to discover that everywhere I would go, my teacher would go with me, because he taught me these glyphs, and he started telling me that, and I knew. And I would go, by the way, after he walked up to me, I would go down there every single evening, and they would walk around me. They wouldn't give me the visual, but boy, did they give me the audio of them walking on either side of me many, many times. And I would stay down there till dusk, till it was dark, because I didn't want to leave. I wanted to hang out with them. I ended up pitching a tent down there. That's how much I wanted to hang out with them and get to know them better. And when I said, I love you, Kombe, that is not to be taken as, oh, I have a crush on you, Kombe, I want to be your mate. But we had developed quite a close relationship just through the glyphs and through him talking to me while I was sleeping on a cot and vibrating me and going through all these lessons. It becomes a very close connection. I can't explain that to you until you actually experience it. So it took me a while to figure out that he went with me everywhere I go. They would actually walk me out in the dark, and not hand in hand. I would hear one on either side of me. I would stay till dark, and they would walk with me out of the forest. I never feel afraid in the forest, ever, because I feel fully protected. This is this kind of paranormal stuff, or what some people call woo. When they see pictures like this with these light anomalies, which I see all the time now, is part of the Sasquatch realm. It just is. So you have to kind of get used to the science behind what's going on here with energy. My friend was with me up at my gifting area. He says, I walk back on the log and it's not even dark out, and he says, are you carrying a flashlight? What in the world? He saw all these white orbs all around me, and I said, no, I'm not carrying a flashlight. And he says, well, this is what I saw. And he was pale. And I said, okay, oh, great, let me take a picture. I thought I might be able to get it in a picture, and I sure did. By the way, they're not round. When these things show up, they're not round. That same friend, we were sitting at his 20-acre property on the Hoe, and I wasn't able to take a good picture of this, but 50 of these blue-white orbs were sitting on the trees in the tree above us. So it's a great big leaf maple. We're having a campfire. All of a sudden, I notice all these things glowing in the trees. I'm like, what the heck is that? I really feel like our research needs to become more sophisticated. We need to bring people into the research, if we can, that know a thing or two about quantum physics. And you've probably heard Ron Moorhead has written a book on this topic. And I love listening to Ron speak, because he's right. He's nailed it. He absolutely nailed it. So now I read a lot of books on quantum physics because I'm trying to understand about energy and consciousness. This stuff gets really deep, you guys. Next time I hope to be able to get a better photo of these blue orbs. But the thing about the woo, what some people like to determine the woo, is that you can't pick and choose data. If you pick and choose data that you're only comfortable with and not the rest of the data, then you're not practicing science. You're practicing religion, almost. So you can't leave that stuff out. By the way, I love teaching kids. Kids are like, they don't have any preconceived notions. They still believe in magic. They still believe the world is a magical place. They're willing to put their heart out there to these beings. I taught my best friend's nieces, and this is them standing around. The next morning after we put this, they wrote up this really heartfelt, like a Santa Claus letter. And I said, well, go ahead and put some food out. Okay, now you guys go ahead and make a peanut butter sandwich for them with honey on it and that sort of thing. And one of the littlest girls, she made them some soup, some leaf soup. And put the flour here. So the next morning, now I didn't take this at the exact same angle, but you see that the kids they're all standing around, all three of these little girls are so cute. And notice, do you guys see the changes? This is like one of those things where you get to see what's different in the picture. So they acknowledged these kids. How often can you be on the edge of wilderness and put food out like this and it's not touched, right? But here they took the plate, they moved it up on the little note that little note says, thank you, Sasquatch, for protecting us. We love you. I had taught them all about the Sasquatch. I was showing them footprint, foot castings and that sort of thing. And I taught them that they'll protect you in the forest. If you ask them to protect you, they'll protect you. So they were thanking the Sasquatch for protecting them. But notice that they moved the food up over the note, and they all signed it. Love, Lacey, love, different names. So cute, you guys. That's a letter that you want to keep. And notice how they moved the soup pan down. And the sandwich is actually, I told them to cut it into a triangle to see if it actually moved right or left. That's why I like to have it cut. This is not the exact same angle, but it looks like to me it's moved a little bit to the left. These kids, I said, they acknowledged you. These kids started jumping up and down and cheering. And they were like running around telling their parents, oh my God, Sasquatch acknowledged us. I love teaching kids. The Sasquatch teach having a reverence for trees and nature. What they're teaching me now, which is really advanced stuff, but it all comes back to, well, what's the cause of all this destruction going on, loss of salmon, fires, on and on and on and on. We have to come back to having a reverence for trees, nature, and not just that, each other. So Tom talks about it a lot, respect. Respect. We don't even respect ourselves. And a lot of times people don't respect the Sasquatch. But if you can't respect yourself, how are you going to respect your fellow human, right? And there's a lot of division going on right now, especially, right, lately in the last several years. This is my brother connecting with a tree recently up on the whole rainforest. This is the biggest hemlock I have ever seen. That's a big hemlock. What do you say, Tom? He comes from a logging background, right? This doesn't do it justice. You have to see this thing. It's just huge. My brother loves trees, but my brother is rather skeptical when it comes to Sasquatch. But he'll sit and he'll talk to a tree all day long. He will. He'll sit down with it and he'll talk to it. He loves trees. So I decided when I took him out to the hoe, I wanted to connect with his heart, and I let him go out and connect with the trees. I showed him where all my favorite trees were. I know the hoe like the back of my hand now because I've been out there so many times. And, the Sasquatch are teaching us to reconnect with who we are. Sorry, this slide is a little out of sequence. And so if you reconnect with who you are, then doesn't it stand to reason that you're going to have a little more respect for yourself and your environment and your fellow humans? So really getting at the root cause of what the Sasquatch are teaching me now is to go back to heart, basically, and get out of this greed, ego, anger, all those things that are kind of causing a lot of destruction. Bullying on people, this sort of thing. This is my niece. So I took them out for the hoe experience, and this is the first time I've done this lecture, so these are a little bit out of sequence. This is probably one of the most important slides of the whole. This is me sitting at one of my favorite giant Sitka spruce trees up in the hall. And this is my view when I look up at this big large leaf maple. And I sit there and I'm just still. And I think that, and for me it was really, really difficult in the beginning to just be still. But we've got to come back to this, you guys. This isn't about going to the whole rainforest and setting up trap cameras, bringing your FLIR, all that kind of stuff. They are teaching me, and they're teaching the people that I bring up there to just learn to be alone in nature, because you're going to learn about who you are if you could just sit still. Do you guys notice that it's become a very busy... I feel like we're... instead of being human beings, we're humans doing. Human doing instead of human being. I am the same way. I'm so guilty of this. If I'm not doing something, I feel like I'm wasting my time. So the only place that I can do this, I have to go to the whole rainforest. You know why? There's no cell signal out there. So I go deep into the Ho, then I can disconnect. And I can disconnect from the outer world, and I can reconnect with the inner world. And that's what I do, and that's what they've been teaching me. And so some really advanced stuff comes from that, by the way. They taught me that I could connect with ferns, for example, and that ferns, this is one of the first lessons they taught me. It's a more advanced lesson. And it really works well with ferns. I was going to bring a fern today, but I didn't want to do it right in front of you. To get that fern to follow your hand. You can actually connect with that living being and have it follow your hand. It took me 45 minutes the first try when Kobe was teaching me. I was very frustrated. I get frustrated easy, you guys. And I cuss and swear at him all the time because I'm always so frustrated, or at least I was initially in the first year or two. I don't do it quite so much anymore. But you can actually connect. So what he was trying to demonstrate to me is that we're all connected. You're connected with every plant in that forest and every tree in that forest, and we're all connected with each other. I just found this, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. It's a very short clip of this woman who teaches how to be still. Very short clip. I'm monitoring my time here because I know that it's it's kind of hot in here. I promise you I'm almost done. And then if you have any questions, I guess we're going to have discussion tomorrow.
And there's something that every indigenous culture has in common, is that there's a deep connection to nature. There's a deep connection to storytelling. There's a deep connection to sound and sonics and music, and there's a deep connection to ritual, and there's a deep connection to silence. And, in most shamanic cultures, if you go there disheartened or dispirited or depressed, usually the shaman will ask you one of 4 questions. When did you stop singing? When did you stop dancing? When did you stop being enchanted by stories, and particularly your own life story? And when did you stop being comforted by the sweet territory of silence? Because wherever we stop singing, or wherever we stop dancing, or being enchanted by stories, or comforted by silence, is where we begin to experience, from their point of view, soul loss or loss of spirit. And every culture of the world knows that in silence you touch contemplation or reflection or a mystery that you don't touch in any other way. And
I realize it's getting harder and harder to find a quiet place to do that. But the whole rainforest is was dubbed the quietest place, I believe, in the United States, maybe the world. I bought myself a Hennessy hammock tent, and I found that this type of camping, for me, really facilitates the connection that I'm making with these beings, especially if I don't have the rainfly on. I went out my most recent trip out in the Ho. There is something about a hammock tent. Does anybody have a hammock tent? It relaxes you. It puts you in this state of theta brainwave or something, or just it's so relaxing. The minute you get into it, you're swaying like this. And I meditate that way, and so I sleep that way if I can without the fly on, and they come up and surround me. And the last time that I did this, They surrounded me, and they were all calling like wolves. It was wolves. It was all wolves. It was very wild. Now, I just, I have become so comfortable in all the things that they mimic all around me all the time. So what you want to do with that is you want to look up the meaning of wolf energy, wolf spirit energy of wolf, because every animal is a teacher. And so, I did that. And wolf really, really represents freedom. And it's really poignant because I decided to step back from my dental business and become more free. I was tied to it for 21 years. I didn't have any freedom. I couldn't even go backpacking for 3 or 4 days. There's no way I could even do that. So I decided to go on a sabbatical. And it was interesting because the wolves surrounding me calling out, it's about freedom. I decided to take that step of finding some freedom for myself. And now I find my life going in a completely different direction. I actually came across this glyph on the Little River. I was with my ex-husband. This glyph is something that they're putting out for a lot of people right now. So be mindful of this, all right? I've noticed this on a lot of people's Facebook pages. They started putting this out for me a couple of years ago. And this is what it means. We're walking up to the trail on the Little River, and 100 yards from this, the river splits into two, like this, and then it comes back. This is what this glyph is actually doing, is showing the split right before we got to it. But I knew it was a glyph because I'd seen it many times. And this is us splitting from who we really are on this side and coming back to who we really are. You see how this stick is woven through the leaf? It's a very intricate little glyph here. It's about coming back to your heart. This split means this is greed, this is ego stuff, all the bad things that's going on. So keep your eye out for that. So I decided to start a new guide service, you guys. I have cards up here if you want to grab one. And so I take people into the Hoe. I haven't even decided, and I really want to do at least a 2-day trip, which means I got to put my puppy in daycare. I've got a puppy now. He's a lot of work. So I haven't even got the website up yet. So this is really new. I just got the business cards done. But I want to, for those that are ready for it, I want to take you on a journey within the whole rainforest, but also a journey within yourself and connect you with the Sasquatch, connect you with a teacher. That's my goal. That's my intention, is to connect you with a teacher. And this is my last slide. It's a parable. If you've ever heard about the 6 blind men that are, come across this elephant, and we've talked about this. Tom and I have talked about this a lot. Jeff Meldrum actually showed this slide, I believe, in one of his lectures. These 6 blind men are trying to, describe what this thing is. And it's an elephant, and each one of them is only getting a little part of it. Like one of them's got the tail and thinks it's a rope. The other one's got the trunk and they think it's a snake. This parable goes thousands of years back, I believe. I feel like this is what we're doing in the Sasquatch research. I feel like the Sasquatch are giving each group of researchers, including Tom and I, because we're kind of on the same level, although I've kind of veered off into another dimension entirely. But no, I just really feel like they're giving each one of us, each group, Olympic Project, EFRO, Expedition Bigfoot, everybody's getting some piece of the puzzle, I feel like. And, Jeff Meldrum, Dr. Jeff Meldrum. And I feel like it's time for us to become more inclusive and more holistic and start sharing our information openly and not excluding data that we don't understand. Because that's the whole definition of science, is to explore and try to find definition and meaning in what you don't understand. And I think they're doing this on purpose, you guys. You know why they're doing this on purpose? I feel like they're doing it on purpose so that we all come together. This is kind of our own little teaching, our own little lesson, if you will. I think that the Sasquatch community needs to come together. There is so much division and so much, don't you think? People attack each other for being crazy or whatever. Anyway, that's just... So you have a choice. Bottom line is you have a choice. If you want to have a teacher, you can. By the way, and by the way, you have to have a strong desire for that. It has to really come from here if you want a Sasquatch teacher. You have to pay the price. It's a little bit of work, right? You have to make them a little bit of a priority, which doesn't mean that you quit your job. It just means that you put a little bit of time into it every day. That kind of signifies, hey, you're important to me, and allow your teacher to teach you. So it's not truth if we only try to describe the elephant as a rope or a snake. It's not truth. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm after finding truth, but I'm also about really developing a close connection to these beings. I wanted to ask you, remember the slide in the beginning where I said, what's your intention? I'm going to close with this. If any of you want to share your intention, if you're willing to share your intention, or keep it to yourself and actually think about it over the next few days. Because when I had to search my heart for what in the world my intention was, why was I doing this Sasquatch research? Why was I doing it? It took me a while to kind of answer that, and it was, it became very clear to me that my intention was I wanted to get to know them. I wanted to get close to them. And it was really, and then it became I wanted to learn from them. And now they're teaching me the old ways. Kombe calls it the old ways. One thing I've noticed about the Sasquatch when they speak, not when he's speaking in his native tongue, which I don't understand, but when he speaks in English, his words are so short. Like he'll say, what you think you make be. And that's pretty powerful. It's short and sweet, but it's powerful. What you think you make be. So be careful about your thoughts. Check your thoughts, but find in your heart what your intention is. And I thank you guys for listening. I know it's been a long talk. Thanks, you guys.
There you go. Interesting, huh? She's sort of my teacher.
Yes.
I've been spending the last couple of camping trips with her. And it's interesting. And I will tell you, one of my first experiences was with her. Get over them.
Okay.
Trip over the wires here. Anyway, it's about 3 o'clock. What I'm going to do is let you all kind of get some fresh air for about five minutes or so, and then if you come back, then we're going to do a drawing, okay, for the raffle and things like that, okay? So go to the potty. I made sure that there's enough tissue in there and paper towels. So and also you can go out and check with the the bread, fry bread and stuff. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Judy Carroll.
Shit, I'm sorry that video didn't play with that gal speaking. She was sitting in an old growth forest. Yeah, I have that book
As
already.
for appreciate what Savella has put on here. This Marblemount Bigfoot Conference is an amazing event. You guys need to come out here if you get a chance. Look for it on Facebook. That was Judy Carroll again speaking at the Marblemount Bigfoot Conference. As for us, we are going to take the rest of the time and enjoy the rest of the conference. Those were your two speakers for the day. And so tomorrow is our last night. We are done after tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is our farewell show. So I'm going to let Eric finish this out here, and this is Cole signing out.
All right. So, tomorrow, again, the Marblemount Sasquatch Conference is from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. I know Thom Cantrell, and I'm not sure who the other speaker is. I don't have that schedule in front of me. But, absolutely. So, remember, tomorrow night, 7 p.m., normal time, Pacific time, is our last show, our farewell show. So, see you tomorrow night. And remember, stay safe and keep your eyes to the skies.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here at S4 Radio. remember to head over to Facebook, give us a like, and show your support. Are you feeling left out? Did you not get enough? Remember, you can always find us on Amazon Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, iTunes, and anywhere else you get your podcast globally. Join us every Sunday night, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for S4 Paranormal Radio. And remember, keep your eyes to the sky.